Good morning, everyone. This is John. I am so excited you're here to join us today for our final guided session called Taking Flight with DISC in Communication Styles. So, this is generally focused on individuals, and today we're certainly going to talk about each of the styles, and then we're going to explore how it can be used to improve communications and results. So, before we begin, I'd love to hear who has had experience with DISC before.
Hey, this is James Patopoulos. My group, actually at GSA, there was a big push to do DISC. And so my branch actually did DISC to where it gives your individual and then it gives you a holistic view of your branch and how they interact.
Hmm,
Yeah.
awesome. So, can you recall what each of the letters stand for?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me that. I know I'm an IS, and so there's only four other letters, right?
Right. Well, DISC is D.
There's
But,
IS, yeah, yeah.
right. Okay.
So I know that's what I am, but it's I just actually just they sent out a email to the region for those that have signed up for DIS to go ahead and redo theirs because it's been a couple years. So I'm actually in the process of doing that myself.
Awesome. Okay, so here's the letters and the names of the quadrants. Someone else, I'd like to hear, what do you remember about one of the quadrants? Anyone at all? Okay, we got D's are bossy. Catherine, Wanda, it looks like you all had some experience as well.
Good morning. I have, but it's been, a long time ago. I'm really interested. I like the idea of having your whole organization or branch section to understand um, those collective findings. I did not have that. I really don't remember what mine was, but I will tell you in transparency, um, and maybe I'll learn more today. I found it a little difficult for me to relate to it. I know there's different ways, and I know it's different than Myers-Briggs, but there's just, I think, sometimes different assessments that resonate with you.
Mm-hmm.
And this really didn't for me. So I'm interested today, considering it's probably been about 15 years, to
Okay,
maybe brush on this.
fair enough. Let's
So
see.
John,
We have.
John, I
Go
have
ahead.
a little input too. Can you hear me?
Yes, I certainly can.
So I'm gonna have to disagree with the D or bossy. All my choices came down to like whether or not I have positive influence in my own decision making and I believe in myself. And basically all the ways I answered it were like, yes, I'm positive. Yes, I'm good. Yes, I can do it. Yeah, I think I can get it done. No, I'm not very introverted. No, I'm not this. And I got like 45% dominance. It was
Okay.
super wild. So I was like, I just feel like the dominant quadrant could just more like relate to like being like an assertive, positive person.
Right, and that's a great point,
Thank you.
Anthony. Where you know.
John, this is Karen. I'm actually a D and I'm a high D. Um, so in the bossy just comes kind of a joking thing about, the fact that we know ourselves and we can be in charge.
I
Okay.
like that. That makes sense.
That's a great point, and it is a matter of perspective. D's are bossy or they're direct. They know what they're going for and they get it done. So, and I think what we've heard briefly here is that that's kind of one of the challenges with DISC in what I call its raw form. It is great information, and you might remember your style, though recall for the other styles that you interact with can be challenging. And it takes a lot of study when you do a DISC. And here in the chat, DISC kind of goes with, DISC goes by a couple of different names. Steadiness versus supportive, compliance versus conscientious. So you're right. DISC kind of, it varies a little bit. And today's training is from a company called Take Flight Learning. And they did something unique with DISC and paired it with birds. So based on what you know about eagles, can you give me just some general characteristics of what an eagle is? They soar high. Thanks, James.
They're American.
They're American.
They're an apex bird.
Apex. They're strong. They're dominant. They're bold and wise. Feel free to take yourself off mute. Yeah, just when you think of eagles, what comes to mind? Scavenger, that's an interesting one. So for eagles, you can often think of them as bottom line, direct, decisive, results oriented. Let's go for our next one, a parrot. What comes to mind when you think about parrots? Personality, talkative, social,
Colorful.
colorful, fun. Absolutely. These are social, fun, energetic people. When a parrot walks in the room, you know it. They repeat what's said. They stick out in a crowd. You're right. All right. What about doves?
Peacemakers. Peaceful.
Peaceful. Absolutely. Harmonious. Helpful. They're the folks that you definitely see when you need support. Are they alone, or are they usually in a flock? They're quiet. Yeah, that's a good one. What about owls?
Wise.
Wise. Yeah, good. Catherine says alert.
Intimidating.
Intimidating. Okay. Night vision. I like that, Mary Jane.
They're
They
always
watch from-
scanning. It's like they always have awareness of what's going on.
Absolutely. They're watching from afar. They've got a bit of a distance on them, but they're focused. You're right. So they're detail oriented. They're systematic. They're definitely getting stuff done, but they're a little behind the scenes. And the other part that you can look on here is with any quadrant, you can, on our x-axis, you can think of it task versus people. What are they more focused on? And are they fast-paced and verbose, or are they even-paced and reserved? And this gives you a really quick overview of our 4 styles. And, it falls in line with the DISC, where our owls are C's, parrots are I's, eagles are S, or eagles are D's, and doves are S's. So what I'd like to do for just a moment, if you're familiar, go ahead and in your name under the participants tab, click on the little ellipsis and rename. And since you have your DISC results, add in what's your bird. Okay. Or if you have 2, if you're an ID, then put parrot and eagle. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and rename ourselves real quick, because this will be important and useful later on. Okay. So there's a handful of great quotes that I'd like us to keep in mind, kind of in the back of our heads during our training today. Because first, we have to understand ourselves, which is often the easiest because we have the most experience living with who we are. We're in our heads 24/7. Many of us for decades on end. As you understand yourself, then you can consider the model and find out, where do you fit in within a framework and in relation to others? As you might recall from StrengthsFinders training, anything carried to an extreme is no longer a strength. And it can hold you back when you're not aware of it. And finally, others are different. Once we understand ourselves, then we can fit it into a model and begin to understand others and figure out, are they bossy or are they just direct, as we talked about a little bit earlier. So here are our goals and objectives for our time together today. We're going to build our understanding of the 4 styles. And then we're going to use that to begin to identify the styles of others around us. That's going to, in turn, allow us to adjust our approach. And of course, we're going to talk a little bit about what overuse can look like and what we can do to help tone that down. So as you might imagine, throughout human history, there have been a lot of models that people have used to understand themselves and others. For thousands of years, starting back in China in 500 BC. Interestingly, they have generally followed a similar quadrant model, which has been mappable from one to the next. You've recently completed the DISC assessment, and it was first conceived by William Marston back in 1928. It's hard to believe that's been around for nearly 100 years already. And you might be interested to hear and know nobody actually owns DISC. And that's actually enabled tens of millions of people to take it over the years. Additionally, since no one owns DISC, many companies have taken and helped modified it and made it their own and added a little bit more to it. Take Flight is no exception, and it's a relative newcomer with just about 11 years. And yet it's been taken by over 20 million people so far and has had extensive validation studies done to help confirm its accuracy. Here's an example of what you'd receive if you completed the Take Flight assessment. Graph 1 is the adapted style. It's how your styles would express themselves at work or in groups around other people. Graph 2 is the natural private self, which is who you are at your core. It's you being your youest. And then the final graph over here is this overall or perceived self. It's how you see yourself, and it's an average of the natural and adapted style. And that's generally what many of the DISC assessments focus on. And in this example, you can see some pretty big swings and differences. It's really high in the eagle and parrot, and the dove and the owl are pretty low. If you haven't guessed this is me. I'm a parrot eagle. I'm a talker and a doer. In my natural style, the parrot flew off in search of other people to go be social with. The eagle's not far behind, looking for all those things that need to be done. while the owl and the dove are just kind of chilling and relaxing at the base of the tree, doing their own thing. That's just my natural style. That's that middle graph. My public self, my moderated, evolved, if you will, the parrot and the eagle are toned down. They're brought down. And that's helpful so that others aren't overwhelmed by my constant chatter or need to get stuff done. And what I like about these charts is it shows the types of roles that can help a person recharge. Anything above the 50, that's considered energizing. Below the line, you'd be pulling on skills that aren't natural and can be draining. And it's not good or bad, it's just awareness. And in case you were wondering, about 10% of the people have a single style, 60% have 2 styles, and 30% have 3 styles. So we're going to switch gears and we're going to do a couple of exercises. I'm going to open the break rooms in a moment, and you're going to self-select the room that best fits your dominant style. So we're going to go for a TV, and it's not just any TV. It's the big one. You have plenty of time to do this. You can buy it from a store or online. And over the next 5 minutes in your rooms, I want you to talk about what would you do and what are the steps needed to go buy the TV. Does anybody have questions before I open the breakout rooms? Okay, welcome back, everybody. So I'd like to hear, how did it go? And I'd like to hear from our doves first. I'd like to hear what process are you planning to use to help get the big one?
I think 3 of us shared our process, and it's generally we're going to look at the reviews, look online, see what other people say, and then compare models. So, and I like to see it personally. I like to see it in the store because my visual perception may be different than other people's.
Okay, awesome.
I've seen TVs in the stores. It was like, I don't even like this one. So, but yeah, we had 3 people, and I think that was the general consensus.
Okay, and Emma says lots of research and questions, going to review. What do you, and I think I heard that you were going to hear from other folks too. Is that right?
We'll just compare. Yeah. The 3 of us that talked in the breakout room, we talked, and it was all kind of similar testimony. But as far as, but you know, we want to look at reviews and see what other people say. I really rely heavily on reviews, especially when I go shopping. I mean, you're going to spend that kind of money. You want to get someone that's, you know, people that are happy with the product.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that is absolute classic Dove, where social, gathering information, researching it, quiet. I'd like to know, if you ended up with a really pushy salesman, what would you do?
I would walk away. I'm not sure about the rest of my.
Walk away, leave, Emma,
Yes.
capital, gone.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. You're going to sleep on it. You'll do your research. If you don't trust the salesman, you're going to leave. You might even wait for a sale. Yep. Okay, let's hear from our Eagles. How'd it go? What's your process?
Yeah, the Eagles were were mostly aligned. If we cared about buying a TV, which some of us didn't, but if we cared, then we would do our research on our own, whether that was from talking to friends, looking on the internet, researching the specifications, determining, exactly what we needed based on what we wanted to do with it, whether it was gaming, watching sports, whatever it might be. We would know all that. We would know the prices that we found online, and then we would go into the store and just tell the seller what we wanted. If they didn't want to give us the price, we would just walk out. That was basically the Eagle philosophy. And it
But
was,
we
it
didn't
would
care
evolve.
what other people's reviews or thoughts were either. Not one of us said, hey, let's look at reviews and see what other people think.
Yeah, absolutely. How long did the discussion take?
About a minute and a half.
Yep. Yeah, that's absolutely what I expect with our Eagles. You're going to be done first. And you know what you want, and then you're moving on. How about our Owls?
Just one other thing, John.
Oh,
The other thing
yeah.
that we decided as Eagles is that once we've made the purchase, we're not going to give it a second thought afterwards.
Yeah, you're absolutely
No
moving on.
second guessing.
Yeah, you're done, and you're on to the next. Awesome. Okay, how about our Owls?
I think we looked at more the functionality of the TV, the size of the TV for the area that it's going to be in, the clarity of the TV, and then also the trends of the TV, the length of survivability of previous TVs, models, return rates, and really it's the picture upon the options that it provides. But really that's where we were at, was serviceability, size, and functionality.
Mm-hmm. Did you all talk about whether you're going to, how you're going to get it home, and anything about arranging furniture?
It took us a minute to start to communicate. I think that might be that owl nature, just kind of observing, waiting who's going to say something first. And we didn't quite get to that point on the transportation of the asset home.
Mm-hmm. How long would you all anticipate the process taking from research to purchase?
Probably a little bit longer than everybody. So maybe a mix between was it the pair or the dove that went first, and then the eagle, taking everything into consideration. One of our members, he had a TV for over 10 years. And I think that that's, staying consistent. I think that's more of where we're at. I could be a little bit wrong there, but if it works, staying with that same trend, that same model, and not deviating too much, because that's, I don't know, maybe one can consider it as being a safe zone. That's where what you've perceived before in the past, what you know now to be the future, and not much deviates or changes depending on, like I said before, trends of the TV. Maybe if you want to research a little bit further into maybe the CEO or the ownership of the company, and how the model of the TV is gone, or the assets that are put into the quality of the TV. One thing I mentioned before, Vizio used to produce a really good TV, and I don't think they produce them anymore, but it was very functional and cheap.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I hear all the owlness in there of research, knowing what has been steady and stable, having all the facts, taking time, and considering all things. How about our parrots?
We looked first into the reason why to buy our TV. So we decided, we all won the lottery and decided to upgrade just because. We ordered it online and have it delivered and installed, and everything looked perfect. So at the end, we invited friends and a family and had a fun movie night.
Oh, wow. Absolute parrots. Not only are you going out, you're buying it, it's fairly quick, but then you're making an event out of it. And
Right.
you're talking to everybody like, hey, here's the TV. What do you want to watch?
Right.
So, yeah, that's awesome. And really, this isn't about buying a TV. It's how you do anything. And I think you may have heard each other as you're talking about the owls and the reservedness versus the eagles. We know what we're doing. We're buying it. We're moving on after we bought it to the next thing. Or our doves who are, we're pulling back. We're relaxed. It's not a rush. I'm pulling people, but if I don't trust somebody, I'm out. So it's absolutely how you do and how you approach things. Let's do one more exercise. So let's pretend we are all working for the same agency and we're coming back into the office multiple times a week. Each of you are part of a committee tasked to redesign the break rooms with a drink station. There's going to be 4 break rooms, 1 for each bird, and your committee has been tasked to come up with everything that area needs based on the styles of the bird. So similar to our last exercise, I want you to go to the room that best fits your dominant style and talk through how you'll design your break room and drink style. What's going on? What are you offering? What furniture are you including? How long are people going to stay there? What's the vibe? So I'm going to do another 5 minutes. I will reopen our breakout rooms and then we will come back and we will talk about it, okay? Okay, welcome back, everybody. So I'd like to hear about your breakout room and your drink station, and we're going to start off with our owls first. So owls, tell us all about your breakout room and your drink station.
This is one of the owls. We kind of all agreed we'd really like different types of seating zones. Some that can be a little more private or individual, and then some that have group tables and some that have larger tables. That way it can meet a lot of different meeting or lunching needs, because sometimes people want to sit by themselves, sometimes they want to join a group. We also agreed that we want beverage and food options. Caffeine came up, refrigerators, microwaves, vending machines. So if people are working late or forgot their lunch or didn't bring their lunch, there's still something they can grab there. We also had agreement on some kind of board that kind of lets us know what's going on, like an electronic bulletin board or a TV that's showing important information or slideshows that, if you're sitting in there, you can also kind of be updated as to important things that are going on with the department. We'd like to see some, charging ports and Bluetooth opportunity. So basically kind of a comfortable kind of whatever you need, and could be just that day, to feel comfortable and have your lunch or snack.
Okay. What's the vibe in that room?
It's very open, very individualized, kind of chillaxed.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. Awesome. So a lot of options, definitely keeping in the loop on what's going on. So kind of that reserved, but aloof, but I got to know it all. You've got all the options depending on what you need. All right. Awesome.
Yep.
So now let's talk about our parrots. How's your room? What's your drink station like?
All right. So I took a lot of notes for this one. So it's going to be very colorful. So no government grays. We're going to take our big TV that we bought previously and put that in there. Massage chairs, DJ booth, popcorn maker, snow cones, lots of snacks. And with all the drinking and the snacks, we're going to have a gym so we can exercise. And then we're going to have a bouncer at the front. So to kind of, for crowd control, don't want to make sure too many people get in there. And then at the end of the day, we'll send out a survey and get some feedback from folks to see how they liked it.
Okay.
But also it's no one is resigning from our company because of that break room. Everybody are enjoying it, so it's a win-win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the break. I like that, and like the idea that's colorful. There's not that the government grays and blues. That's great, and it's a big social event, isn't it? That's what I thought I heard over and over. You've got something for everybody, and it's energetic. Cool. All right, let's hear from our doves.
All right, so we got just a comfortable room, the quiet seating area, kind of refreshing, some serene decor, with a TV going, water cooler, sink, microwave, just your practical stuff, a fridge, and then a snacks machine, neutral colors, with some bold on an accent wall. So kind of just an inclusive, non-specific is the vibe I picked up.
Okay. Quiet, reserved, plenty of space for people. Definitely how I'd expect a dove room. How about our eagles? What's your room like?
We talked about a lot of different options at first, but then we settled on the fact that almost all of us don't ever use a break room. So essentially, ours would be a grab and go room because most of us either eat at our desk or are on the go and trying to get the job done a lot. And we don't really have time to decompress because we're so focused. So we would have a room that had like pop, water, coffee, like maybe some fruit and snacks, and like a table and chair just in case like we decided we talked to a lot of people normally working and we would go sit in the break room away from people if we needed that, extra few minutes. But essentially it'd just be a place to go and get stuff and have all the other things like a fridge and a microwave if you needed just to keep your stuff. But essentially it's not really a chill zone for us. It's more of a place to just get what we need to kind of refresh and go back to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what I definitely expect for our eagles. It's grab and go. I have the mission. I need a space to get away from people on occasion, but it's not a social event. It's just you have everything you need, but not a lot of just we don't care about the personality of the room. It's the mission. So it sounds like you would all be very comfortable in the room designed for you. But what about if you had to go to another room? Could you do that? How comfortable would you be there? Like eagles, if you had to go to the parrot room, how would that be?
I think
That's
it
a
would
hard-
depend on what kind of job I was doing. If I'm working around a lot of people, that's the last place on earth I'd want to go.
I'd be very comfortable. Laura says hard pass.
Maybe after hours, but not during work hours. It sounds like everybody else's room is a place to party.
Yeah. Yeah. Some people said the dove room sounded great, but the parrot sounded stressful. So again,
I came from the owl room. One of the comments that was not said was I was saying that designing a room strictly for your bird is not realistic because in a work environment you have all these different personalities and the systems are set up to make us have to work together to accomplish the mission. So you have to have the diversity of knowing how to understand and work with your team members. So I believe that each one of us has to learn some form of how to work in that other room, that other break room, because that's the only way our work can get accomplished.
mm-hmm. Very well said. Thank you, Keith. Carrie shares, when I want to break, and this includes some solitude and time to regather my energies. With all that hustle and bustle, it'd be too much. Yeah, and Carrie's a dove. So yeah, quiet, peaceful rooms where you recharge. And we just heard kind of the point here. It's not about getting a drink. It's not about a break room necessarily. It's how we do things. It's how we recharge. And all four ways are valid. We're going to bump into each other. And at the end of the day, as we just heard, we're just trying to work together to get stuff done. And as we're able to take the judgment out of it, we can reach another level. So with that, we've been going for about an hour. Let's go ahead and take a 5-minute bio break. And I will see you back at the top of the hour, 10 o'clock Central Standard Time, okay? All right, welcome back, and thank you all for rejoining me. So just had a couple of great exercises, and now we're going to talk a bit about style polarities. And we're going to talk about which style would be closer to the extremes and why. So let's start with our first, which is focus. Which one do you think would be further on detail oriented? All right, owl. Yeah, I'm seeing owl, owl, owl. Okay. So on the other side, who's our big picture folks? Eagles, eagle, eagle. And you're right. I'm not trying to trick anybody here. You know, our eagles and our parrots, they're not a lot of details. They're comfortable with the big picture, and they're going to fill in the details as needed. On the other side, our owls and our doves, they want to get into the weeds. They need to know what is happening, when, why, consider those second and third order effects, all about that. So how about delegation? Who's closer on structure? Anybody at all?
I'm gonna say the owl.
Owl? I see dove. Okay. How about freedom? Parrots like freedom, yeah. Eagle and owl are structured. Dove and parrot want freedom. Absolutely. And delegation usually happens in your own style. You think you've done it right, and when it doesn't match the other person's, then it starts to create stress. Our eagles and our parrots, they want the freedom. Doves and owls appreciate the structure because they can think of all the different ways to do things within a certain framework. How about stress? Who's internalizing the stress?
Eagles.
Eagles? Okay, I see owls in here. Doves. Tell me a little bit more about eagle.
I think eagles they're more, they're leaders, and they're not like going to communicate their feelings to everybody. They're going to deal with it. So that's why I felt like it was more of an eagle to internalize stress.
Okay, I appreciate that. So how about on the external side, externalize? Who's going to let you know? Parrot. And you're right. On the far externalized side, parrots, you know what's going on because they have a constant stream and they talk their thoughts out, whether you ask for them or not. On the other side, owls internalize. They try to figure out what's going on. What is stressing them out? Why? Solve the problem at the source so they don't have to deal with it.
So why are eagles over on the externalized side? I'm just curious. What was
Okay. Yeah. So eagles, they're going to externalize, hey, here's what's going on, and then they're going to let it go and move on to the next thing. So it's a continuum, and I also want you to understand, you're not only one thing. You're some mix of all four of these styles. And eagles generally will trend towards the externalized, they're not going to have a constant stream like the parrot. They're going to say, here, this isn't working. I'm moving on to the next thing. Does that help?
I would think they would go nuts just moving on to the next thing without finishing. If they're bottom line oriented and decisive, it will be hard to move on until that thing is, in my mind, but I mean, that doesn't make it right, but just in my mind, I would think they would want to get it accomplished.
Oh, I agree. Getting the job done, absolutely, Eagle. They're going to get it done. It's more of the stress of what's happening while it's getting done. I 100% agree with you on that.
Okay.
So can I chime in on this one, please?
Sure.
When eagles, which are usually the top of the food of the work chain, provide the instructions, it's the rest of the chain that has to execute on the mission. So which creates all the deadlines. So the owls and the parrots are the ones who actually execute on the plans from the top. And there are a massive amount of deadlines that are associated with it. So that is a tremendous amount of stress. And the assumption is that only the eagles have stress. It's actually, it flows downhill and then it goes back uphill. And so the other three have to constantly learn how to work together in order to accomplish the overall mission for the agency.
And that's a good perspective, Keith. And I do want to take a moment to say, not all leaders are eagles. In that scenario, the eagle as a boss, absolutely, they figure out the deadline. Everybody that supports it, if they have a good blended team, they can kind of figure it out. But you can lead from any one of these styles as well. Let's go to the next. How about fears? Who do you feel fears failure more?
That'd be the doves.
Doves fearing failure. Tell me a little bit more about that.
I think they're so empathetic and in tune to everyone else, not only their coworkers, staff, anybody they may be supervising, but also management, that they may be a little harder on themselves.
Okay. And I think you caught it there. Everyone else. And I think in here, failure, mission failure versus people disapproval. So yeah, owls and eagles on the failure. I would agree with that. On their fears, they'll verbalize it. They're gonna only take a couple of minutes to connect the idea, and it's easy for them to let go. Our owls and our doves, they thought about it a while. They're connected, and rejection or disapproval can be an issue. How about risk taking? Oh, Mary Jane, so you had a question. Not parrots, they're helpful in supporting others. Was that a question or a statement? Okay, statement. Thank you for clarifying. How about risk taking? Who's going to consider what's going on first versus who's just going to go out there and take action?
Definitely the owls will think first.
Owls are our thinkers. Wanda says eagles are the risk takers. Parrots are into action. Yeah. And you're right. Our thinkers are those owls and the doves. Owls will take risks so long as they have thought it through. They've had time to analyze it, figure out the risk or reward, and all those different plans, A, B, C, D, E, all the way down in case of failure. So doves, do you like taking risks or not?
Only if necessary. I'm speaking from personal experience, so
Okay.
only if necessary. I mean, it's sometimes you get to the whole, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. You know, there are times where I'll strike out. It's like, this needs to be done, and I'll go ahead and, make the curtain call on it. So, but, generally it's not a big risk taker. I want to, solid grounding.
Well said, Sean. Absolutely. Doves are low risk. They will not take the risk unless absolutely necessary. And in those events where we have to take risks, they are there to help support people if or when things go wrong. Now, our Eagles, they're in it to win it. Even if it takes them a few different times, they want to be first, and they're very confident. And our Parrots, they're going to take the risk. They're going to have fun with it. Be optimism, and there's going to be the stories. You remember the time when is usually how they start. How about rewards? Who wants that public recognition versus private?
I think Eagles and Parrots are public.
Eagles and Parrots trending towards public. Okay, yeah. We got Parrots public, private owls and doves. Yeah. Doves definitely prefer private, quiet recognition. They need to hear what they do matters. Owls, they want to know what they're doing is right so they can keep doing it. Eagles, public recognition is fine. They're going to take it in stride. They want to know the right people knew that they got the job done right. And our Parrots, public recognition is great. They're all in. Put them up on stage with the lights and the fireworks and everything. They want the show, and that's great. Now, I do want to take a moment to say, don't assume what works for you works for others. And the wrong form of recognition may not be perceived as a reward at all. If you put a dove up on stage with the bright lights and all the flashiness, they likely will not be extremely happy on it, and they may feel it's a form of punishment, if you will. So be aware of style and preference. Oh, Karen's got a great book recommendation, 5 Languages of Recognition. Yeah, I love figuring out what's meaningful for other people, because, how you recognize a job well done is huge. All right, let's wrap up our style polarities. Work preference. Who's an independent worker versus a group? Mary Jane says owls and eagles are independent. Yep, owls are more independent. Independent owls and eagles are independent. You're right. Owls and eagles definitely want to just get the job done. If you remember our quadrants, they are all about mission. They're on the left side of the graph. They're getting the job done. They're all about the tasks. On the other side, parrots and eagles, they're for the group. You can think of the bird, just kind of the general characteristics. Who do you see in large flocks? Generally, it's going to be parrots and doves. Eagles and owls, you see them like one at a time. Occasionally, yeah, Mary Jane, very well said. Parrots, large groups. Doves definitely prefer smaller groups. Yeah, but owls and eagles, usually don't see a lot of them together, unless it's like a big award show. And thinking of COVID, and when we were in that max telework status, our owls and our eagles loved being sent home to get stuff done. Conversely, when it was time to come back, they likely felt that they were far more productive and got more done at the, in a private setting. Conversely, the parrots and doves were not okay when they were sent home. And when it came time to be back, they were excited to have their groups. And I can testify for myself, being a parrot first, my parrot was almost off the charts, kind of flying away. I was not okay in COVID. I needed the people and the interaction. Thankfully, I also am Eagle and I could get a lot done. So it was a bit of a win-lose. I will say that tragedies can and will flip a graph overnight. And sometimes it's permanent. Other times it'll go back. And sometimes people moderate in between. Let's go to communication. Content versus delivery. And one thing you might, how many times do you read an email out to your team or friends when you're sending great news? Parents, how do you all like to send that information out? So Karen says, Eagles and Owls are towards content. They're short and to the point. They say it and they get it done. Yep, and Eagles, or our delivery is all about the doves and the parrots. And you're right. So our Eagles, they're the short bulleted list, no fluff. Here's what we're doing. Here's what happened. Great news, moving on. Parrots, boisterous delivery. Doves are quieter. You're right. Parrots, we're using GIFs, emojis, explanation points, different colors, bold, underlining. We're loud in about everything that we can be. Our doves, they're reading it. They're checking for tone. They want to make sure that it's to the point without being offensive, and it's also that encouraging time, that frame. And our owls, they're super organized. They're going to read it, reread it, make sure all the attachments are included. They're going to be thorough. Their emails are lengthy, and they're going to preemptively answer all the questions that others might have. So now let's go for style differences and listening. I'd like to know who's best at listening.
I'd like to comment on this one.
Sure.
In the day and age of this short attention span and the need to get things done and accomplished, it seems like every one of the four birds are challenged with listening, because it's like once we get the information that we need, or it takes too long for the information to be delivered, it's almost like you're checking out to the next task or event or situation that you need to have accomplished. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree, Keith. The past few years, my attention span has dwindled significantly. And that's, you pointed out, it's likely true of many of us, and it's a skill that we have to exercise. So, I like Mary Jane here. I say doves are better listeners because they have the smallest beak. So they're not the loudest talkers. You're right. That's great. Yeah. Several others in chat. Doves are definitely listening, the best listeners. They're here to help. They're empathetic. What about on the opposite side? Who's not a good listener?
My son.
Parrots and eagles. Yeah. You're right. Parrots love to hear about us. But if you're, I'm curious, when you're listening, what are what else is happening? What would you prefer to be doing when you're listening to a story? One that says be focused. So our parrots out there, when you're hearing a story, what's your next step? So maybe it's just me, but parrots, when I'm hearing a story, I'm also trying to figure out how can I establish bonding by sharing a similar story. I'm not a great listener. I'm trying to figure out, okay, I'm hearing the story. I'm hearing what's going on. Now, how do I connect with this next person? Owls, all about facts, details, accuracy. They're listening for inconsistencies. Our eagles, they're listening for that action item. What's going on next? How about change? Yep, Karen, as an eagle, I am often thinking about get to the point. Well said.
There's also another scenario where you're hesitant to provide feedback because of what if I'm wrong?
Yeah. Yeah.
And now you lose your perceived credibility.
Mhm.
So if I don't say anything, I'm seen as smart because of my silence.
So when I have a great question for you, Keith. So when you're asked for feedback, do you give it immediately or do you sit back and then give it later?
Funny you should say that. I had an email that I received yesterday, and I have 2 more days to respond to it, and I'm sitting on it because I really don't want to respond to it. But I know as a leader, I must provide some type of comment. So yes, I'm sitting on that situation right now. I really don't want to respond at all, but I know as far as the team aspect, and I was told to respond only back to the person. So it's not about the group, but I do not want to be a part of it, but I know I must respond. So I'm sitting on it for that reason.
So
but I could have actually responded to it within 5 minutes, but it would have been a raw emotion. And I know that's not the right way to respond.
So as you're sitting on it, what are some of the things that are going on?
Why are you asking me to be a part of this decision when ultimately you're going to make the final decision? That is my that is my main thought. But the other one is all about team building. So if I ask the team for the buy-in, then when the decision's made, you don't feel like as a team member that the decision has been forced down your throat. You at least had some type of collaboration.
So you're gathering facts, it sounds like?
Yes.
Yeah. Classic owl. You can, and you have the initial knee-jerk reaction, and then if I have time, I'm going to take it. And my anticipation is you will take at least to the next day and a half before you respond, just to make sure you've got all the information possible.
So this scenario, I really don't want to respond.
Yeah.
This scenario, I'm like, no, I don't want to respond.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take the one in the middle, and I'm going to respond today instead of taking tomorrow.
Aw, okay, yes. Awesome. So let's switch gears. So change. Who are our leading change people? Who's out there? Who's out in front?
Respond to this one as an owl. An owl can actually be out front because based on your experience, you understand how things work in your department, and you're the person that's probably going to have to execute or clean up whatever decision was made from up top or down below. And so you try to get out in front of it. So when it happens, you at least have a few steps on resolution.
Okay. How many questions do you ask when faced with change as an owl?
I probably ask about, I could ask about 20, but I know the people I'm talking with, the other 3, so I try to keep it to 6.
Okay. Here in the chat, we've got eagles. Eagles and parrots are leading change. So eagles, how do you handle change? Laura says, jump in and go.
I'll problem solve later. I'll figure it out later.
So jumping in, if there's a problem, figure it out if I have to come back to it. Karen says, get the facts, make the decision, and go. Yeah. How about parrots? When you're faced with change, how do you all approach it? If I don't have a volunteer, I'm going to start calling on people.
So do you want us to answer based on what's our dominant bird or just chime? Because I'm trying to be quiet because I don't want to hog up all the questions.
Well, I appreciate your willingness to engage, Keith. I'm also wanting to just kind of hear from our dominant birds. You know, who's a parrot? How do you approach change?
Yes, thank you.
So Christina says, I am a parrot. I like to hear the details about change, but I'm typically fine with it. Yeah.
I'm a parrot too. I don't mind change, but I'd like to add my portion to the change too.
Mm-hmm. Do you do it in isolation or do you normally gather folks around?
Me gather folks around. I mean, yeah, with people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and parents are very much they're fine with change. They're looking at who's involved. They're gathering all the players together and they're trying to figure out how much fun are we going to have with this. Mary Jane says, ask a lot of questions and see how it works for others. So it's that social aspect. So let's switch gears to our doves. When you're facing change, how does that go? Victoria says stress out. Yeah. What happens after that? As a dove, I'm a team player. Stress out. Yeah, Victoria says stress out, accept, and adapt. Mary Jane, dove may sit back sometimes and then follow. Yeah. As we heard earlier from Sean, you know, when we're facing change, it's only when necessary. They need time to process. They want to figure out how it's going with others. And they're when you find for our doves, when you find out there's going to be change, how likely are you to speak up? Victoria says, not at all. I'll speak up. Wanda says, I'll speak up when necessary. So absolutely, doves, when faced with change, they need time to, similar to our owls, step back, figure out what's going on, but they're not going to say right away. and that's fine. How about time management? For our Eagles, how do you do time management in your to-do list? Uh, prioritize? Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's a challenge because I see a squirrel, you know, and I get off one priority, then the other, and sometimes have trouble focusing.
Right? So you're moving quickly from one to the next. What about our owls? How do you approach it on your to-do lists?
I do like checklists and, breaking things out into boxes and organizing them, but I can also get really deep into something and let time get away from me and realize it's 7 o'clock at night and I need to go home. So that can happen as well. But in general, pretty organized and strategic about how I approach time management as an owl.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a owl also. I agree with Evelyn. I also kind of try to look at what priorities are for management and sometimes staff that I'm supervising, because there's certain things that I have to prioritize and kind of incorporate that into the list making.
Mm-hmm.
As an owl, I operate by the other two call it a list. I call it a system because my day tends to get hijacked by meetings or upper management. So I use the list in reference to stay on track. So I can at least look at the list and say that I got one thing accomplished today. And then it helps me with the rest of my week. So at least by the end of the week, I can go back and clean up those things I didn't accomplish for the day.
Yes, absolutely well said. Systematic, get it done, lists, organization. So for our owls, if a project can be done right or on time, which is it for you?
Right. Like keeping an eye on the time too. I don't want to do both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm seeing here in chat, you're going to get it done right. It may take more time. What about our parrots? How do you approach it?
Multitasking.
Multitasking?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you have a list?
Me personally, I do not. I'm actually multitasking now. I'm on a Zoom meeting and then completing my alerts on another side. But no, I do not keep the list. I start my day with stuff that I need to do, and by multitasking, actually pretty able to complete. Not always 100%, but 98%. Most of the days of the stuff that needs to be done today.
Right. Yeah. And I hear it very well. Multitasking, it's going to get done. Mary Jane says, likely to have fun while getting it done. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It may feel a little bit like chaos in motion to an outside observer, but it makes most sense to us.
Right. Exactly. It may look chaotic to other people, but I am perfectly functioning in my chaos, and the end product is actually completion of the task. So
mm-hmm. And thank you, Captain Bachelor. Eagles always have a list. Absolutely. How about our doves? How are you approaching time management? Any of our doves? Okay, thank you, Carrie. So I really appreciate getting things done on time, but I also have great value in accuracy and being precise. And for our doves, are you worried more about the tasks or the people? Task. Okay. Carrie says, for me, it's the people. Depends. And that's absolutely correct. You know, doves are all about getting it done and keeping the peace and taking care of others along the journey. About our next one, feedback. And I'm talking constructive feedback. How do you tell somebody they messed up? How about our eagles?
I mean, a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. So, try and find something good to say, and then not, just, you have to talk to people with respect and dignity, and just point out the error. And everybody makes mistakes, and so be kind and show, what it should be, and what you're seeing, and try and figure out a way to prevent it from happening again.
Okay, well said. So we have here, I would be straightforward as possible while still being encouraging and supportive, and offering some resources that would help resolve whatever the issue is. We have forward with respect. Yeah. Yeah, our eagles, tell me what's going on, tell me the impact result so I can get it fixed, and let me figure out how to get it done. How about our owls? How do you like to receive that type of constructive feedback?
Specifics, facts. Because sometimes folks will talk to you, but it'll be so general by the time you get done talking to you, you have no idea what the issue was. So I prefer people be very direct and factual with me. I agree, with what Greg said also, we also, when we're giving feedback, kind of start with something that's a strong point. And then also, just bring in facts, as opposed to making it personal or vague.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, our owls, they're looking for facts. They're looking for what went wrong and why. And they're going to have that longer conversation so that they can fix it at that root cause to avoid anybody else having those issues. How about our parrots? How do you receive that kind of feedback? Okay, Christina says, I like in-person feedback. Do like to hear an example of how to improve and move forward. Mary Jane says, glad for it and take it in stride. Wanda says, with respect, short and sweet. So do you like to do this feedback? Do you like to do it as a team and talking it out? Or do you like just tell me what it is and I'll figure it out? Oh, Mary Jane says, oh, and share it with others. Wanda says, no. No to what? Sharing with others or sharing or, oh. I personally like the one-on-one constructive. Okay, so tell me what it is and I'll figure it out. Yeah. Yeah, parents can go either way on that. They like the directness. Often they like to problem solve together and brainstorm. How about our doves?
John, and we're talking in generalities too, but when you're talking to people, right, and you know them, everyone has their own distinctiveness and their personalities. And so you would also, when you communicate with people, you will have that in mind as well, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. This doesn't happen in a vacuum, and people bring their own histories with them along with the relationship. So well said, sir. And as far as, you're absolutely going to know who you're dealing with and you're providing feedback to, so you can take that into consideration. So yeah. And I'm just you're right. We are talking a bit in generalities, and also to inform those who are not of your style, how do these different birds interact and how do they like to receive it? So thank you.
John, I'd like to speak on this one. My experience over these years have shown me that people come to work and they bring what's called a representative. You tend to not know which version you're talking to, and so you just have to go by best practices when I'm interacting with the person, and then so I try to communicate based on that style, but it's sometimes it's difficult to really understand the person very well as far as working with them and their style of language, because it's based on what personality do they want to be known for. So as an owl, that's one of the things that when I begin to sit back and just pay attention, because I've learned that people will reveal who they are. You just have to allow time to pass, and a little bit by a little bit of who they really are will come to the front. And then that's how I'm able to gather data. And then that's when I begin to come to and understand how to really communicate with that person, via email or in person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you bring up a great point, Keith, of, people do bring their public persona in, and that's where sitting back, forming the relationship, as we were talking about earlier, of, to better understand, because trust is a thing. Do you have my best intentions at heart? So that's absolutely real. And it does take time for that to reveal itself, which happens little by little, especially if somebody's had quite a bit of experience in their past and it's not always been positive. What about conflict? When faced with conflict, I'd love to hear, how do eagles approach it?
John, I used to be a supervisor of about 50 people. And when I did introduction to people, I would talk about the fact that conflict is a normal part of life. And I don't want them to avoid conflict. And so I would give them two options of handling conflict. And I always say, you're only going to get in trouble if you don't handle the conflict. And so, conflict is just part of life. Just deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Well said. And additionally, in the chat, conflict head on. And see, welcome it, because ignoring it will result in worse. Yeah, absolutely. Eagles don't see conflict as a bad thing. We're going to approach it, and we're going to get through it. How about for our parrots? How do you all like conflict?
This James, I think, and I don't know if this is a parrot, but I tend to usually like a little bit of a balance. Like I can take conflict, and sometimes it makes me laugh, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me, kind of a response. But then I try to balance it out with something else that's probably more fun to kind of overtake it, so I don't think about it so much.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that's a parrot.
Yeah, I heard it loud and clear. It's you're trying you're dealing with it. And it's kind of a social event, as Mary Jane has in here. Join us for the break room with some snow cones, because that fixes everything.
It gets on my wife's nerves sometimes when I do laugh at things. She's like, "Why are you laughing about it?" And I'm just like, you know what? It's just like, of course that happened. Or I think, well, the odds are probably pretty high that that was going to happen. So I mean, it's kind of after the fact kind of response that I have, but just kind of roll with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, easy going, happy go lucky, until it isn't. What happens when it's a personal attack? How do you respond to those?
I think I'm at the age where I just don't care.
Okay.
So yeah, if somebody comes at me, because I do coach my kids in sports, and sometimes if I have a ref or a parent or somebody that's coming at me for some, usually it's not parents, usually it's maybe the other team, or I just kind of take it in. And then, like I said, I'll probably laugh about it, or, and then I just move on really quick.
Mm-hmm.
I do move on really fast. So I don't know if that's a parrot, but when something happens, it's bad, I take it in, and then I just move on to the next thing.
Okay. Excellent. How about our doves? Okay. Victoria says, I dwell. And Victoria, are you speaking as an owl or a dove? Okay. It could be both. That's fine. Sometimes we don't always consider it. How about some of our other doves? Let's see. Don't like conflict, but I've learned to stay pretty level-headed. I take most everything personally, even if it isn't technically a personal thing. Okay. What about if you're helping others with a conflict? Does that change things at all? Oh, Carrie says it changes it completely.
It all has to do if the other person is teachable.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that is tough. I'm dealing with that with a scenario right now where in the open meetings, one of the team members is very, social and everything's great. But in the one-on-ones, very adversarial, and I already know this. I know how to do this. So being teachable goes a long way.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see. We have others. Let's see. Try to be empathetic. So, yeah, Carrie says empathetic for sure. So our doves definitely like to avoid conflict until it's for somebody else. And then you will never find a better ally, because doves will fight for others. And they are excellent problem solvers. As we heard earlier, it's level-headed, and they're going to solve it. How about our owls?
As an owl, my approach that I've learned over the years is I see the conflict and I look at my paycheck, and I understand in order to, I know being a federal worker, my paycheck will post no matter what, as long as I validate. But I look at it from that standpoint, saying, in order to get to my next paycheck, I need to resolve this, whether it's agree to disagree or actually come to a resolution. And the second version is I like to see everything from humor. And I created this philosophy I call reverse the shirt. So I take a scenario where it's chaotic, meaning conflict, and I reverse. Well, I guess reverse the shirt comes from you leave your home and you have your shirt on the other way, and it has the tag on the outside. And someone tells you, and then you go reverse the shirt to the proper side. So I take the conflict and I look at it from that standpoint. So no matter what the conflict is, I have trained myself to reverse the shirt on the scenario.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. See, in here we have finding resolution is my next big goal and conflict. What did I do? What can be fixed? What must be accepted? As we were hearing a little bit from Keith, kind of, you know, what do I have to play in this? Keisha says dwell and then address. Evelyn says I try to keep the peace and avoid conflict because it's stressful. Yeah, owls definitely like to retreat until they have the facts. They, as Keith is saying, reverse the shirt. They're going to put themselves in other people's shoes to try to figure out the different points of view. And then we have also in here, you know, some owls that make an SOP for every issue so that they can avoid it.
So I read that, and you do not want to encounter an owl without an SOP. You want an owl with an SOP.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, an owl without an SOP, that's I'm not sure that exists. Yeah, thank you. All right, and how about our final one? How do you know you're right or when you're right? Parrots. How do you know you're right?
Well, for me, because I can show you the requirement.
Okay.
If there's a hard requirement, I'm just happy to show you, and that way you know it's not my preference, but this is the way we all got to do it.
Okay. Yeah, Mary Jane says everybody's having fun getting the mission done. Yeah. And Mary Jane, you've really hit it on the head as well. You know, it's Christine, harmony. Things are getting done, and we're having fun. Yep, everybody there's the fun aspect, that social, that parrot. Everybody agrees, people are getting along, and there's that sense of optimism in the air, and it feels right. How about eagles? How do you know you're right or when you're right?
John, I just want to add to that. You know, I don't always try and see things like I'm right and you're wrong. I think it's not a good way to resolve things. People have different perspectives. My wife always tells me girls are made of sugar and spice and everything nice, and boys are made of snakes and snails and puppy dog tails. So we just see things differently, and it's not about right or wrong. It's just about sometimes it's not about right or wrong. It's just coming to a place of agreement. So there's no winner or loser. If someone's right and someone's wrong, then there has to be a winner or a loser. And I try and avoid that if possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, kind of seeking that harmony. Let's see. In the chat, we've got eagles always say they're right, even when they know it may not be 100% true. Laura, show me the facts. So yeah, eagles have that confidence, and they know what the requirements are, and they can point to them like, I know how I won. How about doves? How do you know when it's been won? Or when you're right? So our doves are being rather quiet and reserved, and that's okay. So our doves know they're right. Oh, here we go. As a dove, I try to present the facts that I'm not right. I try to be peaceful. Yeah. When it's calm, it's going well. Absolutely. Yeah, they're all about is it going well? Peaceful, it's dealing with others. They're all about the team. They can take the ego out of the decision because it's all about the team. It's about everybody else getting along and moving forward. Harmonious. Yeah. I appreciate how you say, Carrie, is everything is harmonious. It should be, quote, right. And let's wrap up with our owls. How do you know you're right?
I think when the project or whatever you're working on moves along smoothly and, everything lines up, the facts line up, it's getting done correctly. And so basically a successful meeting or successful project.
Okay. Yeah.
As an owl, I can actually see the finish line inside of the chaos. So I don't have to be near it, but because of the experience, I can see how to navigate through the conflict to get to the objective.
Okay. Yeah, I think you both captured it really well. That you can see the finish line, the goalposts, and you can prove how you got there. You've done the homework. You've done you know exactly where you're going to be. You've got a map of it. As we were talking earlier, they've got the to-do list. They've checked it off. Here's how I know I'm right. I got all the checks done. Okay, now we're going to watch a video about how to use some of these general characteristics of bird styles to start identifying the styles of others. Better?
Yes, yeah.
We've been talking about the styles, and we've been talking about flexing to other people.
Oop, I pressed them.
Well, if you're going to flex to other people, you have to be able to figure out their style. So how do you meet somebody and very quickly assess their style? I've always said you can tell someone's style sometimes in just seconds. You can look at an email and tell their style. So let's talk body language, tone. How do they come across? So I'll model each of the 4 styles, and you see if you can figure out which one I am. Imagine I'm meeting you at a networking event, just introducing myself, shaking your hand. So I walk up to you. First one. Hi there, Merrick Rosenberg. Nice to meet you. Which style is that? Now, my guess is you probably just said eagle. There's a confidence, there's an assertiveness to it. Let's try another one. Hi, how are you? So nice to meet you. Merrick Rosenberg, welcome. I have a feeling you probably just thought to yourself, that's the dove. More soft-spoken, very connecting. How about this one? Hey, how are you? Great to meet you. Merrick Rosenberg, pleasure. Of course, it's the parrot. It's big, it's energy-filled. And the last one, hi, nice to meet you, Merrick Rosenberg. It's more businesslike, it is professional, there is a formality to how they communicate. In fact, if you send someone to a sales call, they get to meet a group of parrots, they come back from that sales call and you say, hey, how did your meeting go? They say, it was amazing. They loved it. You felt that parrot energy. Next day, salesperson goes out, meets a whole group of owls. They come back, same question. Hey, how'd your meeting go? I don't know. They ask a lot of questions. I'm not exactly sure what that means. For the owl, you can't quite read what they're feeling. It's not written all over their face like it is for the parrot. How about in an email? I've always said you can figure out someone's style. Show me a half a dozen emails, I'll tell you their style. You can do that too. For an eagle, it's short, it's direct. There's no, hi, how are you? It's right to the point. It's all about data and results. They tell you what they need, they ask for what they want. For the owl, by contrast to the eagle, it is long. Lots of information, lots of questions, lots of bullets, see attachments. Imagine the two of them communicating. An owl writes an email to an eagle, filled with questions, 14 questions with sub-questions, and the eagle reads it and writes back, sounds good, or okay. That's probably not going to fly with the owl. A dove email, how does it begin? All dove emails begin in much the same way. Hi, how are you? I hope you are well. I hope you had a great weekend. It's that personal touch. You can feel the connection. It closes with something like, have a great weekend. There's always that positive beginning, that positive end that connects you to them. It shows you that they care. For the parrot, there is one keystroke. It is the dead giveaway. You have just received an email from a parrot, and it is the exclamation point. Hi, exclamation point. Have a great day, exclamation point. In fact, if you're a parrot, you've probably done the following. You write a sentence. You are very excited about this sentence, so you give it an exclamation point. But then you write the next sentence, which quite frankly is more exciting than the first sentence. Now you have to go back to the first sentence, turn it into a period, boom, turn the next sentence, exclamation point, bam. In fact, parrots often do an exclamation point sweep after they have written an email, just to make sure they haven't used too many of them. So you can tell someone's style from their tone, from their body language, from how they write. Think about the power of that. If you can read their style, you can flex and adapt to them. And here's the beautiful thing about this. The more you practice people reading, the better you get. So here's a homework assignment for you. Later on tonight, turn on the TV. I don't care if you're watching a sitcom or a drama or a news show, tune into the styles of the people you are watching. The more you practice, the better you get.
All right. So yeah, Jane says, make it rain, exclamation points. I am 100% on board with that. I have a lot of them, and I do the sweeps several times. Oh, Evelyn says, I'm very much an owl, but I definitely do the exclamation point thing. I don't want to be perceived as cold and impersonal, so try to be friendly. Yeah. And that's called flexing, and that's great. And that's kind of what we're going for. As a parrot eagle, I've adapted some of the dove tendencies of, hey, how are you? And kind of that friendly and the connectedness. So that's good. So we just finished watching a video that talked about the different styles and how you can begin to assess just from emails or introductions what style another person might be. Now we're going to put some of that to practice, and we're going to practice what I call bird watching at the office. And I'd like to talk through what would you expect to see in the offices of our different bird styles. And for this analogy, for this exercise, consider everybody has their own office and not just a shared cubicle space these days, as many of us do, but just if you were walking into, say, a dove's office, what would you expect to see? And anybody can answer this, okay? So, well, what would you expect if you come into a dove's office?
The golden rule picture.
The golden rule picture? Okay. Got Mary Jane saying calm, minimal decor. What else? How about our doves? What would you put in your office? Oh, Carrie says some sort of soft lighting if I have the option. Yeah. Neutral colors. Would you have pictures of any friends or families? Pictures of both? So as we're seeing here in the chat, doves are going to have that calm office, neutral colors. They're going to have pictures of family, of friends. They're going to have soft lighting. It's going to feel homey. There's going to be extra chairs handy in case people happen to stop by. How about for our Eagles? What's your office like?
Awards, certificates, accomplishments.
Okay, award certificates. I like that. Whiteboards. What goes on
Organized.
the whiteboards? I apologize. I think I cut somebody off.
Oh, that was me. I was going to say the office will be organized. Whiteboards will typically have lists or goals, stuff like that on them.
Okay. Yeah. Our Eagle office, it's going to be, here's what I've won. Here's what I've accomplished. It's going to be everything in its place. It's going to be organized. And it's going to be functional because they're all about, let's get the mission done. Now let's switch over to our owls. What's your office like?
Computer, 3 large monitors, probably a filing cabinet.
Okay.
The office would be peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much noise once you log onto your computer. So an opportunity to have some I mean, technically your desk is where everything happens, but working from home as long as I have, I've learned how to look at my desk in zones.
Yeah, zones. I like that. And you all captured it well. Where owls are going to be clean, calm, organized. We heard a filing system. Does anybody kind of have for our other owls? There's generally 2 types. We have filers, everything in its place, super clean, and then we have the owls who are pilers. They know exactly where stuff is, and please don't ever touch the pile because bad things may happen to you. What about our parrots? What's your office like? All right. See, motivational quotes, flowers, awards, lots of pens, open door, coffee mug. Christina has doors open, welcoming, candy bowls, lots of seating. Right. There's a lot of color. There's a lot of energy. There's a lot of invitation for others to come join. Mary Jane's going to still have that snow cone machine. I've got a popcorn machine in my office. It's awesome. Nobody happens to stop by, but I've got it. All right. So just kind of thinking about our different our offices and our desks, you can start to kind of pick up what might somebody else's style could be. What about dress style? What about our owls? Kind of what types of clothing and stuff do you prefer for your dress?
Practical, comfortable.
Practical, comfortable, yeah. Is there a bit of a routine in there?
Yeah, mostly blue, black. Might kind of be crazy with a little bit of tan sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Owls definitely all about practical, a bit toned down. Occasionally they get crazy with blue, but yeah, it's kind of that conservative part. What about eagles? What kind of clothing are our eagles in? Suits? Perhaps? Anything else? Do we have name brand eagles? Name brand, it matches. Briefcase, binoculars in the picture, getting a high level overview. Yeah. Our eagles are about status symbols. When possible, head to toe brand name. How about our doves? What's your dress style? Got classic. Okay. Anything else? Unassuming, practical but stylish. Softer, casual dress wear, lighter. Yeah. Our doves love to be comfortable. I think, at least I happen to be married to my wife, who's a owl dove, and she is all about the cardigans and sweaters in the fall. We've got blankets everywhere, practical footwear. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, they're all about that quiet comfort. How about parrots? What are our parrots like to dress in? Brightness. Yeah. Absolutely. Our parrots, they're loud, fun, inviting, energetic colors. Let's see. We got cozy but stylish, color matching, chic. Some sort of colorful conversation starter, like a fun necklace or shoes. Absolutely. Parrots want to invite others in, and they wear their energy as much as they can. When I'm having to wear a suit, I am rocking some fun socks underneath, because that's the most I can do sometimes, but I've got it. And I will find a way to bring the socks into the conversation. All right, so let's talk. We've been talking through individual styles and preference, and you're probably picking up that you're not a single style. You're some combination. As we were talking about earlier, 60% of the people are a combination of two styles, and then another 30% are three styles. So we'll just kind of do pairings. But for our eagle parrots, they are often outgoing. They like to talk. They seek out leadership positions. They're risk takers. And they're also creative, and they break down boundaries. Our parrot eagles, conversationalist, friend networks, talking things out. Owl doves, they're detail oriented, thought process. They're looking at that impact on people. Then our eagle owls, which has to be right now. It's very driven, held to very high standards. Statistically, in the US, eagles are the rarest. They are at 18%. 32% are doves. And then the rest, the owls and the parrots, make up the other 25%. And out of our combinations, our combos are generally even, I would say, with owl and dove being perhaps the most common. Some of the rarest of the rare, having scores in each of the other corners, those opposite. Eagle doves, about 0.05% of the world. Some of the hardest to read, thinking Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., wedding photographers. Are boomers mainly eagles? Greg, that is an excellent question. Generally, I'm going to have to rely on the statistics, because I don't have an owl part of me. If you remember my graph, the owl's just kind of hanging out the base of my tree. But I would say in general, boomers would follow the statistical breakdown of most are kind of quiet, reserved, with some exceptional eagles. You know, the eagles stand out the most, I would say. Parrot owl combinations, about 1% of the populations. Those are kind of the inventors and artists of the world, the people who both have that inner introspection along with the outgoing piece. And then if for those who have about all four, these are honestly about so rare that they are usually 0%. And that the only person that we've really come across kind of that all four would be someone like Oprah Winfrey, where she can kind of do everything. But the key I want you to walk away with here is anybody can do anything for short amounts of time, but you can't sustain it indefinitely. It does lead to burnout. So again, you're going to have your main styles and you're able to flex into the others, but you have to be able to recharge yourself. Otherwise you will find yourself in burnout. So we heard a little bit ago about, or I have a handful of other quotes, but we're going to talk a little bit about what I call the home rule. And it's really, or I guess we've also heard about the golden rule. And for those of you who know it, it's, how does that go? Treat others how you want to be treated. And that's what most of us grow up with. And it works really well for shared values and virtues, kindness, respect, niceness. And it's absolutely what we need when we are growing up. It's how we learn to work together. And it's a great starting point, but it's not meant to be the end. The home rule, and something that Take Flight has a slightly different bend on, is treat others how they need to be treated. And this is where you're looking beyond yourself and finding out what do other people need. And that's what we've been talking about so much today, and learning about our different styles from one another is, if I understand eagles need quick and to the point, I need to be able to talk about that. Yes. John Maxwell does talk about the platinum rule. Another great way to, home rule, platinum rule, both the same. Yeah. And this home rule works as we begins to work with the other people. So we're shifting those gears from knowing and learning about the individual styles with working with others. So I need an owl volunteer. Who would be my owl volunteer, please? We're going to do a quick exercise.
I'll do it. This is
all
Rose.
Right. Thank you, Rose. All right. So now that COVID's over, OMB issued a memo a bit ago about return to the office, something about monitoring and improving organizational health and performance. I need you to come up with and lead the team transition away from our maximum telework status, and create a plan for how we're going to accomplish our mission with a focus on maximum organizational effectiveness. Thank you.
Well, that's a tall order.
So,
I'd have to look at a lot of information. I think there's a lot of studies out there on going back into the office, and also reviewing what the resources are, where the office is, and how we can utilize those in such a way that we can actually meet the needs of not just owls, but everyone, because some people are going to need more space, like the eagles, so they're going to need their own private space. And I think the doves and parrots are going to be, they could like an open office plan, and owls are kind of in between. If it's an open office plan. Typically, I think as long as they can have space and resources like in the computer monitors and stuff that they need, they'll work okay. But I think it takes some research to get everybody back comfortably.
Okay. So how did it feel when I just kind of gave you that general, here's our mission and objective without the supporting details and the research as you were talking about?
Well, I knew the supporting details, but I'm kind of used to having vague questions thrown at me and digging up the locating the information and details and creating a response. So it didn't really throw me. I don't feel like it threw me, but yeah, I knew as you were rolling on, I definitely had some work to do.
Okay. What about some of our other folks who are primary owls? Like Evelyn, Faith, I see you're both just have it listed owl. How about you? If you received direction like this?
This is Evelyn. If it was like a really short turnaround task, that definitely would stress me out quite a bit because I know I wouldn't have the time to gather all the data and information that I feel is necessary to give the best informed option.
Okay. And Faith says, run, I wouldn't handle this side particularly well, I don't think. Okay. Fair enough. Okay, so I need somebody with primary eagle for another exercise. Okay, Angela. All right, thank you. So on April 13th, OMB issued a memo M-23-15, measuring, monitoring, and improving organizational health and organization performance in the context of evolving agency work environments. Using this 17-page memo, I want you to come up with our team's plan away from the maximum telework status and into the maximum organizational effectiveness model. Using the memo, I want you to write up a report to understand how we're going to accomplish this point by point, along with a detailed SWOT analysis with some mitigation plans. I want you to describe in detail the new policy or the new processes that we're going to need that we don't already have in place, with the changes to the roles that people can expect, along with their new schedules and an implementation plan. I need you to develop the performance metrics that we're going to use to measure how well we're executing our mission as an agency. And 2 weeks following the memo and 4 weeks after implementation, I want you to head up weekly listening sessions with the employees, managers, and supervisors to ensure it's working like it's supposed to, and to conduct an iterative process to address the challenges identified in each until we find that optimal schedule and roles. I'd also like to have a 2-week program update meetings with team leads and supervisors, followed by monthly updates with managers about their concerns and challenges. I also need you to devise how we're going to come up with new metrics to ensure we're measuring the right things and conduct a 2-month validation study to ensure we're using the right measures and follow up with the executive brief of how well that worked out. And finally, I'd like you to develop an executive level dashboard which shows how we're doing based on our metrics as we implement those new processes. And I'd like the dashboard to be grouped by the lowest level teams and the specific goals and objectives which are linked to those higher levels, along with the roll-up reporting ability, so those higher level managers can see at a glance how they're doing, but still retain the ability to dig down into each of the measures and definitions, so they can see those current efforts, past efforts, lessons learned, and upcoming proposals of what will be attempted and measured in the future. Do you have any questions or clarifications?
No, that was beautiful. I'll get to work. Thank you so much for being so clear.
So, but as an eagle, as I went on, how did it feel?
So my initial feeling was a little overwhelmed because you asked me to review and then you asked me to tie it into our current plan and then you asked for all these other things. So my initial feeling was a little bit overwhelmed because I couldn't possibly write down all these things at one time, right? But once I went through once I continue listening to you go on, I began formulating a Gantt chart in my brain of, okay, well, this is first, and then this task is going to be here. And then it was very checkboxy and very clear to me. So I loved that actually. Yes, I think Anthony mentioned it was a little wordy, but I was able to pull through what you were saying, and internally in my brain, I was making okay, he wants me to review this. He needs me to set up meetings here. These are the metrics. So like I was creating a secondary list in my brain of what really needed to happen, and making it visually pretty in my brain so that way I could capture everything that was required.
Okay. And I think Anthony did it really well. As an Eagle, I wanted to tell you to get to the point to what you actually need. And there was too many words. You can get it done, but just let me go do it. And you started to tune out. And honestly, for Eagles, and even as we were hearing, I was already making the plan. I was already getting into work with it. I just need to go do it. And the point here is when we provide information to others in our style, but it may not be their natural style, it's going to create points of stress and challenges. And so that's why it becomes important as we get to know our coworkers that even if they haven't taken a DISC profile, that we can use this information. Like, I'm starting to see a lot of exclamation points. This is probably a parrot versus those 2 or 3 word replies from an Eagle. That way you can start to tailor your responses so that they can hear it in the way that they need to. Because remember, our home rule here is we're treating others how they need to be treated, giving them information in the way that they need to hear it, to process it in the fastest, most efficient way possible. Okay, let's do another exercise. I'm gonna, excuse me. We're gonna take time to help one another learn what and how we need to receive information as eagles, parrots, doves, and owls. So we're gonna do another 5-minute breakout session. And I want you to come up with when you are going to be communicated from other styles. What do you need? How do you best receive the information? What questions do you have before I open the breakout rooms?
What is the objective?
So great question. Thank you, Keith. Our objective is we are going to come up with some really quick tips and pointers when others are communicating with us. What's our style? How do we need to receive it? So as a parrot eagle, and I'm dealing with an owl, how do I need to communicate with you? Does that help?
Yes. The reason why I mentioned it is because in a couple of the breakouts earlier, we could get started faster when we know the objective. So that's why I made sure I asked this time. Thank you.
Classic owl. I love it. And that's why I want to leave space, and because our owls are thinking, they want to know the objective, any other details, so that we can get into it. So great. Well, I'm going to go ahead and put 5 minutes on the clock. If there are any other questions, please let me know, and we'll come back. Okay, welcome back. So I'd love to hear from our groups. Let's start debriefing and hearing from our eagles. Again, our question is, what do you need? How do you receive communication best from others?
Hey, so this is Angela. On the Eagle side, we talked about wanting to know the intent and the objective up front, similar to the 5 Ws, giving us if there's any risk or resource requirements or parameters, we want to know those up front. We want the details required up front, not in a step-by-step process though. We don't need you to tell us how to do it. We just need you to tell us what the intent is and the objective and the timeline associated, as well as the priority level based off of any other competing priorities. So we just need the details, and then let us do our thing.
Okay. Anything else? Any fellow Eagles would like to add?
Oh, just one tiny detail by when it needs to be done. So we need to know the deadline, or, so that way we can work on prioritizing tasks or whatever the request may be, and not just know the why, but why and by when it needs to be done.
Excellent. Yeah. Classic Eagle. Give me the big picture. Give me the parameters. Give me the deadline. Let me run. All right. How about?
Can I ask a question to the Eagles?
Of course.
Okay. My boss is an Eagle who tells me I do not like surprises. I do not want to receive an email or go into a meeting and I'm surprised. But I don't want the details, but I don't like to be surprised. How do you work with it? I mean, I've learned how to do it, but how is that an ego and a parrot? Is that an ego and an owl? Because that's total opposite ends of it. Only give me the high level, but yet I don't like surprises and I want to stay informed.
Hey, this is Angela. I think I would be interested in knowing, or maybe kind of having that individual unpack what feels like a surprise. So that way you're able to be able to like decipher exactly what it is they're needing or wanting. I know we do kind of like weekly updates, and they're just very brief bullet points on the activities that occurred that week and the impact of them. So I think that's always been really helpful to receive. So that way, whenever you, or at least whenever I've gone into a meeting and something is brought up, I'm quickly able to reference. And then of course, if there's any risk associated or impact to the department or the agency as a whole, that is looped in based off of your subject matter expertise. But I think unpacking what feels like a surprise could be beneficial as well.
Okay. So what I did is I built a SharePoint site to give the high level details of the weekly statuses. And then when I have my one-on-one is when I talk a little bit more, because that's the whole, I don't want to be surprised. So it's just, I'm hearing the Eagles, but yet I work with one who also wants to be informed. So to me, that's two opposite ends pulling against one another. So thank you.
Keith, I think part of it is learning how to manage up. What is your boss's style? Like, what is his or her preference? It could be one thing for one person and another for someone else. For me, managing up, like I try to be very mindful of my boss's preferences and try to match her style rather than her matching her style to me. So, and then I expect the same of my employees. So it kind of trickles down. So you manage up, you figure out what's the best way to communicate with your bosses, whatever their preference is, and then just expect of your subordinates the same.
Yes, that is ultimately the direction I went in. So thank you. I just had this opportunity to ask the question. So thank you very much.
Keith, there's recommendations in the chat also.
I see Anthony has a hand up.
Well, it's Rhonda, but
Oh,
yeah.
my apologies, Rhonda.
It's okay. Yeah, so Keith, I agree with everything that everyone said. My concern about having it all in SharePoint is that where they want to go look for the information? Personally, I wouldn't want it in SharePoint. I don't want to have to go find and click and do all these things. I probably would have preferred it in an email, and I probably would have preferred it on a weekly basis. Or on a bi-weekly basis, depending on the cadence of the work being done. So those are good questions to ask. You know, when someone comes back and says, I don't want any surprises. Well, how do you expect an update to come to you? And what method do you want it to be in? And how often do you want that information? You know, it doesn't hurt to ask the Eagles questions, because then we make sure that we get what we want and you understand, you know, the format and the timeliness that we want it delivered in.
So that is exactly what I did. Instead of making an assumption, I asked, and that's how the SharePoint was built. That's how the email of the overview, high level, and that is how in the one-on-one, that my one-on-one meeting has now turned into a briefing of what my manager wants. So yes.
So that was perfect. So if that's how your manager would want that information, then that's perfect. And how your manager wants that information is not necessarily how every Eagle wants that information. So if you were going someplace else, then those are good questions then to ask and establish before you get started. So good job.
Correct. And I also said all this for there's some other people on this call who may not have known to ask this type of question because it applies to one of the other birds as well. So that's why I asked it out loud. So thank you all.
So thank you so much. I appreciate it. Any other questions for our Eagles? Okay, so I'm not hearing anything. So let's go to our doves. How about the doves? How do we best communicate and share information with you?
Okay, I'll take the lead on this for the doves group. We prefer email or face-to-face meetings. We like pictures, charts. Also keep in mind, face-to-face may sometimes be needed because you can't read a tone in email. We need clear instructions or details. We would like the deadline, and we want to know who is our audience. And any other doves can feel free to chime in.
I think Wanda just about covered it.
Any questions for our doves?
This is Keith. So what happens if one or two of those are out of preference? How do you flex?
Gary, do you have any input for this question?
Well, I'm not sure I understand the question. If we're not able to be accommodated by face-to-face interactions or something like that?
Yes, we just experienced COVID. And so for 2.5 years, that was not a possibility.
Well, I think that if we're able to establish some sort of rapport with whomever we're talking to, we can communicate more easily. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Well, if we can find some sort of common ground between one another, or there's some sort of a way to establish, tone. I think I usually get pretty concerned with tone and intent when I'm communicating with someone.
Yes.
And then another way that one could have and did communicate during COVID, face-to-face is in Teams, or like face-to-face meetings during Teams or something like that.
So Keith, do you feel like you had your question responded to? Or?
Yes. I just know that for 2.5 years, that was something that had to be addressed on a weekly basis because we were all told to stay home.
Mm-hmm.
And you had to find out as a team, what is your new normal?
Very true. Yeah. COVID was an interesting experience for many of us.
Yes. And we're just talking about within your agency. What about when you do, like John, you do interagency on a regular basis?
Yep.
Yes.
Very true. All right, so let's go to our owls.
So in the OWL group, we talked a lot about how we like lists and check boxes and the bottom line of what's expected of us so that we can quickly start working towards a goal. And we also talked a little bit about the last assignment that you gave that went on and on and on, and how quickly all of us became overwhelmed by that. Those are just a few things that our group discussed.
Anything else?
We also mentioned about taking that description that you gave, assignment for the eagle and for the owls, needing for it to be broken down, whether through email or whether we was in person, but it had to be broken down into bite size.
Mm-hmm.
The mission is going to get accomplished, but does it have to be all on one piece of paper?
Fair enough. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you want the details and you want them in an easy to digest format that you can look at them?
I would say yes, that's what the communication came out to be.
Okay.
Do you agree, Owls?
Yeah, we want to know exactly what it is we're being expected to accomplish, and when the task is so long and complicated and not really broken down clearly, there's a lot of things that might sound nebulous to us. That's where we get easily frustrated or confused.
Okay. So Faith has give tasks, not concepts. What's the expectation? What's the goal? What's the end game? And a lot of specifics along with goals. So task oriented, live with details. All right. How about our parrots? Let's hear.
So this is Christina. I'll kick it off for the parrots and then open it up to the rest of the group. So for the parrots, we like you to, just come on in our office, come talk with us, let us know what the task is. If you can't be one-on-one with us, like in the office, go ahead and call us. A video phone is great too. We'd love to see you, see your expression as you're, talking through the tasking. We also are really motivated when you start off with, hey, you were selected or chosen to lead this effort. That's really motivating to us. So we're really interested in hearing what comes after that. And while we're hearing the description of everything you're going through, we may also be slightly distracted if you've got like a cool pair of shoes or something like that. We want to ask you about that because there's probably a story behind it. So if you could follow up with it in writing, then we can refer back to it at a later time. We don't want to be micromanaged. We most likely want to work collaboratively in a group to accomplish the tasks. And then at the end, we want to celebrate the success Whether that's just a quick, everybody come into the conference room and have donuts, or if it's like an actual like award ceremony, but that's also very motivating to us. So those are the notes I took from our discussion, but what about the rest of the parents? Anybody have anything else?
Anything
Just
else?
I would say be ready for a lot of ideas.
Okay. So I'm hearing, come in, talk to us, generate ideas, generate excitement. Let's celebrate it when it's done. We're probably going to get off topic because we're going to ask about cool stuff. Any questions for the parrots?
Yes, I have a question, Keith. So also in reference to last 2.5 years of COVID, how did you adapt?
You mean as far as like face-to-face interaction?
Well, face to face was we all had to figure it out.
Right.
Teams is not as Teams is very comfortable now, but when it started, which is March 2020, is when I always reference to it. Second week of March. That first 4 to 6 months, everyone was trying to find a familiarity. So what you guys are talking about was not happening enough. So
Well, I can tell you, for example, my example, or example of the clinic I've worked in, and it seems to me that most of my co-peers are parrots too. So for the time being, we were actually working remotely from home. And in order for us to kind of interact with every day with each other, we developed like daily huddle Zoom meeting actually via Teams. So we were all on camera interacting with each other, sharing ideas, coping if needs to be, etc., etc. We also celebrate birthdays and had virtual parties just to be able to kind of continue with the same off work activities that we used to do before COVID. Everything was virtual, and everybody actually appeared to be satisfied with that. So, if this answered your question.
that's an excellent example of coping.
Also, what we did, and this is this was a huge, that one of us, actually found out a problem with the patients, how we can actually accommodate our patients because we are not in the clinic face to face. So we developed a virtual SOP with all, right, the problem, action, outcome, etc., etc., and at the end the SOP how to be able to help, let's say, suicidal patients that they're calling us on the phone versus coming to the clinic. And we were successful with that virtually. So yeah, it's possible.
So I hear from your perspective that most of your team members were parrots. So it was
It seems to me now that I am actually involved in this conversation. We never did the DISC profile in the clinic, but I would actually, I'm gonna take this from this meeting today to my clinic, to my co-peers, and just kind of curiosity wise ask them to complete that just to see. But it seems to me personally that the majority are parrots.
Thank you for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll say COVID was a challenge. I see here in the chat, as part parrot, I struggled, especially with interviewing for jobs virtually. There's a lot of use for Zoom and Teams. As a parent myself, I was not okay. until some of us started to figure out how to have virtual coffee chats and happy hours virtually, just to have some sort of face-to-face interaction. Okay, any other questions? Oh, a virtual baby shower. That's interesting. All right, so let's take what we've learned and we're going to have an individual exercise. So you've just completed a renovation, a collaboration space, a conference room, which includes moving a light switch which was in the same place for years. Using your knowledge of the different styles, I want you to write an email explaining the change to your team. And for your team, you can go ahead and make the assumption that you have all 4 styles represented. And how can you most effectively reach each style in a single email? So we're going to go ahead and put a few minutes on the clock, and then we're going to come back. But again, this is a virtual individual exercise. Does anybody have any questions? Evelyn, not right now. We're just we're gonna talk it out afterwards. So great question. All right. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and put some time on the clock. All right. So I would love to hear from a couple of folks. What would your email say about moving the light switch?
I'll say, like, there's no boundaries. So I said, hi team, the renovation of our collaboration space is now complete. As a reminder, the light switch, which was located over the water cooler for the past 430 years, is now relocated next to the door. I am very grateful for your patience while all this was in progress, and am thrilled we will no longer have to search for the light switch in the dark. Sincerely, and my name.
Nice, very nice. How about one more?
I'm an owl, and what I wrote was, I'm writing to provide an update on the recent renovation of our primary conference room. Renovations were completed late last week, and the room is now available for reservation and use. Of note, the light switch in the room, which was previously located on the wall to the right side behind the door, has been relocated to the left wall immediately upon entering the room. This change was made for safety and convenience purposes. We hope you all enjoyed the updated and modernized conference room! Exclamation mark for the people who like exclamation marks.
Nice. One other?
This is Rose. I just went really kind of plain Jane, except for I did try to appeal to the different groups. Good morning, team. I hope everyone's doing well! Exclamation point. Just a quick FYI, for easier access, we moved the conference room light switch from the right side of the door to the left side of the door. Please see the diagram below for the new location. Feel free to reach out if you have questions, and then have a great day, and another exclamation point.
I like it. So reaching a lot of different styles in a single email can be a challenge. And one of the keys that I found when communicating with large mixed groups is I will start with the high level overview and any actions that are required. Then I move on to why it is needed, and I focus on building some excitement and some support. Next, I'll move into how does this impact the org or other individuals, where people can go for support if things are going wrong. And finally, I'll include all the fine level details that further expound on the why and the rules, the regulations, the support documentations, and where and any attachments. And the reason I set it up like this is because if I front load the email with just details and bury any action or excitement, I lose about half my audience, because the Eagles, they're looking for What is the change? What do I need to do? If I don't see it in a short amount of time, I'm going to file it in the round bin. Consequently, the parents, they need to know why and how it's important. And then the doves, as we talked about, they don't like change. They're going to when they have to, but they're also looking for the supportive aspects of what happens if and when problems occur. And the owls, I know that they're going to read everything. They're going to want to know what's going on, why it's happening, where do they go to support, and they're going to read through any memorandum, any attachments, and are going to do it 2 or 3 times to make sure they haven't missed anything. I've got some great feedback here in the chat here. James is saying, and remember that annoying light switch? Yep, we moved it. Congrats all around. Love it. David has, we do that in our briefings at FEMA. BLUF, I love that acronym. It's the bottom line up front with clear, concise sentences at the beginning. What is that takeaway? And then get into the details a little bit later. So again, write it generally in this order. It goes eagle, parrot, dove, owl, because that's the level of detail and the attention span that you're going to work with. Any questions about this? Okay, so now as we continue shifting into a broader perspective and talking about valuing others, you can see here there's an arrow that represents a progression of how many people's thinking goes. And it starts with judging. It's seeing and hearing the world through selective filters and projecting your norms, experiences, values onto other people and evaluating them. Understanding moves things a little bit more forward. You start to realize the world's made up of other people with their own points of view. Respecting evolves it to a point where you can acknowledge that other people's ways of doing things works for them. And you can start to set aside your filters as the basis for evaluation. And that final step is valuing, where we understand that in order to get the best results, and as we face complex challenges, we actually need those varied points of view and ways of doing things, and that the measures of success and the approaches to the mission execution can and do need to vary based on the situation. Because can you imagine a team of just eagles? Or what about a team of just parrots? Or how about a team of doves? Or even a team of just owls? What would be missing if we found teams that were only comprised of one type of bird or one type of style?
Groupthink.
Groupthink? Definitely. What if it's a team of just doves? What are we missing here?
I'm sorry, I meant that's what we would have. It's not to be missing. We wouldn't have a variety of opinions.
Thank you for clarifying. Anything else that would be missing if we'd had just single styles for teams? Let's say we have this team of parrots. Is there anything missing to help them get the job done?
John, I think we would be missing maybe priority and organization or task, people to help them stay on task and prioritize
Mm-hmm.
as parents.
Yeah, there'd be a lot of excitement and a lot of energy. And you're right, there would be the lack of focus and getting stuff done. What about for owls? Would there be anything missing for owls?
I think owls like to have a mission.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. So when it, that's usually presented by the eagles, and actually sometimes owls can get a little dry. So having some lightheartedness for the parrots and some of the reminders of our humanity of the doves would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And well said. The goal is to help you understand the true value of having the diversity of viewpoints and experiences in different ways of getting things done. The eagles represent here's where we're going, here's what we're doing. I'm going to keep you focused. The parrots are going to help build energy, going to help move it forward and help you when things aren't looking great. The owls are going to make sure that you consider all the details, plans A, B, C, all the way through the alphabet. They're going to ask all the what if questions, or how do we approach this? And our doves are absolutely going to be there with that empathy and what's it mean for the other folks on the other side of this? Because let's face it, each one of these teams can get the job done. How you contribute to getting the job done absolutely matters, because you bring a unique perspective, energy, and benefits to a team. So the 4 styles at their best. You'll probably remember this from a lot earlier. And we said all these characteristics are good and helpful. That optimistic parrot, the bottom line eagle, the harmonious dove, the detail-oriented owl. But what happens when we introduce stress? All of a sudden, stress changes things. Those good and admirable qualities and characteristics disappear. And then we start to see overused strengths, styles under stress. So I'd like to hear, what does it look like when an eagle is stressed? How do they approach things? Karen says aggressive. What else? Straight to the point. Yep. We said, I hear eagles will also try to hide their stress. And I would agree that can happen. That will work well to a point, but I would also stress that not everybody or nobody is a good enough actor to hide it all the time. So our eagles, they're going to start to show their aggression, their impatience. They're going to be insensitive. They're going to be domineering. They're all about getting the job done. They are hyper focused. What about our doves? What's it look like when a dove is stressed? All right. I get indecisive. Yeah. Procrastinate. What else happens with our doves? Conflict avoidant. Yeah. They start to go into overdrive for themselves, and that starts to look like, as we were seeing here in the chat, indecisive, passive. They can go the other extreme. They can start to over provide support. They can start to feel perhaps smothering. They may offer themselves up. We have martyr here as, just that I got to save it. It's got to be me, because a dove loves to help other people. How about those parrots? What happens when parrots are in stress mode? On fire. What's that mean, James? Tell me a little bit more.
It might be one of those situations, maybe over maybe over exaggerate or overreact.
Overreact, yeah.
Yeah. And so you got to kind of sit back and, take a couple of breaths. So take advantage of those massage chairs.
Where's that snow cone machine?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Let's see, we got emotional, dramatic. Absolutely. All of a sudden they get turned up to 11 as well. And all those good qualities become not helpful. They become disorganized, unrealistic. As we're saying here, dramatic. They start to over communicate. They try to overcompensate. How about our owls under stress? What happens with our owls? Hypercritical,
Trying to
defensive.
analyze ourselves out of the situation.
You say analyze yourself out of the situation?
Yeah, try to figure out what's going on, why it's going on, what can be done to facilitate or alleviate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. See, we got here, Evelyn says, get defensive, shut down, feel attacked, calm on the outside, freaking out on the inside. Yeah. So the owls go into that hypercritical, indecisive, detached. They're trying to figure out what's going on, how they're going to control the situation to get the job done. So what do we do? Because life isn't perfect and situations aren't always ideal. And let's face it, we can't always control what happens to us. Making a plan is huge. But in order to make this plan, you have to first know who you are, know the good, know your value. What are the great things that you bring to your family, to your team, to others around you? And then get good at understanding the people around you and their styles. Communicate with them in the ways that they need to hear it, which will actually impact your results. And then start to consider, how do you adapt your style to meet the needs of the situation? And when you're flexing to a style that isn't, high for you, know that you can do it for short bursts of time, but you need to be aware that your batteries are going to be drained. So you have to understand when that's happening and what you need to recharge. Because the worst thing to have happen is you get into stress without the plan and you just react. But having that plan gives you, okay, here's what I'm going to do. And probably owls love this. I've got my outline, I've got sub bullets, I know what I'm doing. And also know what happens when stress hits. How are others likely to see your style in overdrive? And understanding when others are in that state, in that point of view, in that state of mind. So just a couple of, as we're wrapping up here, some of the principles: don't try to teach a pig to sing. It's going to frustrate you and annoy the pig. We're not going to use our style as an excuse or a weapon. I can't say, well, I'm a parrot, all I can do is talk. I can't go into the analytics because I don't have any owl. Working out of your, understanding that working out of your style takes the energy and can create stress. A low style score is not a weakness unless you lack the flexibility to use it when you need it. When you feel like someone is pushing your buttons, when somebody is potentially in their stress, consider their intentions. The eagles are going into micromanagement mode because they want to get these things done. Whereas a parent may over communicate because they have that need to feel heard. Don't under or overutilize styles. Tap into the right style at the right time. And I saw it earlier in the chat that said, some of the best leaders, some of the best teams have all those styles represented, and they can access them as needed. All styles are really good unless they're overused. Oh, I like this, Angela. As an eagle dove, I have a sticky note on my desk that says, assume positive intent as a gentle reminder when I get stressed. That's excellent. To understand what people need, watch what they do. Try to identify their style. And then you can be able to communicate and you can provide people what they need. And, when all else fails, ask. Remember the home rule, the platinum rule. Treat others the way they need to be treated. Because if you're treating an owl like an eagle, it's going to create stress. And then understand how to use the 4 styles to build relationships so that you can get better results. So what about your DISC style and Clifton strengths? And I'd like to take us just a moment to think back to January when we kicked off our program and we talked about our strengths and our top 5s. Does anybody remember some of the general concepts that we had back then?
Are you talking about the different categories of people from the Clifton strengths?
Whether it's categories, what are just some of the general concepts? What do you remember from it? What resonated with you that you're carrying forward to all the way in May?
So I have actually utilized and provided that document forward to my leadership. It's been a really great opportunity to have conversations surrounding career development based off of, strategy and activator being my top 2. And so it's been a great resource just to have a conversation about, who I am. Whenever new leaders come in, we've had some significant turnover in leadership. So it's provided a great document to have those conversations with regards to career development.
Okay, excellent. Someone else?
My top 2 for the Clifton strengths were achiever and analytical. And I think that kind of goes in line with some of the DISC styles for the owl type.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And those talents, your strengths, are the tools that we use to solve the problems and issues that come into our life. And DISC is all about how do you communicate with others. So your strengths are internal. DISC is how it reflects out to others. And the interplay between these actually came into really clear focus for me last month as I was facilitating a session for a team for Clifton Strengths. And afterwards, the manager came up to me and he said, a few months ago, they had somebody come into their team and they did a DISC assessment and a training. And he was absolutely baffled because he was having trouble understanding how he and another manager who had the same DISC style, but were so different and apparently had so little in common. And when we were able to include and talk through their talents, which were different, it helped immensely as they had differences in their top 5. And it really showed, the DISC style is communicating with others and relating with them. And when they combine with your talents, they reflect into the world all of a sudden. And you can have the same disc style with different talents, and you can have the same talents with a different disc style. And it's going to show up differently to others, and it should. So I'd like to give you a couple of moments to reflect on the ideas that we talked about today. And I want you to write down what's one thing that you're going to stop, and continue. And then I would like you to share them with your mentor when you meet next. I'm going to give you just a couple of minutes to go ahead and jot a couple of things down while everything's still fresh. All right, so we've talked about a lot today. And as we wrap up, I'd like to hear what resonated with you today, or what questions do you still have that I can help answer?
So I don't necessarily have any questions, but the one thing that resonated most with me today is the identification of the four, categories or styles. I'm just kind of reflecting on, out of my team, who is what. And so that is actually one of my starts is taking that disc profile and having the team do it so we can identify it, and then having conversations surrounding that. Because we do all have very different styles. So
excellent. Carrie says, sometimes I find it hard to relate to some of my team members and think they must live on another planet by the way they relate to the world around them. Knowing that they must belong to other styles, it's going to be very helpful. So very true. I'm in, as you know, I'm a parrot eagle, and I had my wife take this test because we had some challenges with communication. Lo and behold, she is an owl dove, which have vastly different communication styles and needs. She didn't get excited about when I was excited about stuff. I had to start relating to her with details and information, and all of a sudden she started to come on board with me once I could fill her need to communicate with her how she needed it. James said it was fun to talk with other parrots. We're unicorns. Yeah. Carrie also said, seek to understand, then be understood. I have to make a conscious effort to listen and understand before jumping. Yeah. I'm an owl. Wanda says, I'm a dove owl. Learn how not to be a people pleaser. Okay. Yeah. I actually had I've actually had my team take the test and learned 3 of us are eagles, eagle parrots, 1 parrot owl, and 1 owl dove. That's a really well mixed team. That's awesome. So again, we had a lot of good information. Thank you for being so willing to engage and communicate, because the good and the bad is I'm vain enough that I love the sound of my own voice, and I can listen to myself all day long because I'm a parrot. And I also understand there is a great value in hearing from everybody else, because, who better to talk to you about what a dove is and what a dove needs than another dove or an eagle. And I thank you all for asking the questions that you did. This concludes our time together. I have no additional content. I hope that you have a fantastic day. Thank you.
thank you all.
Thanks, John.